read 12 books in the month of January and I DNF'd one. Let's hop into my ratings and reviews. January was the first month that I had a Kindle. I got one for Christmas. I am a changed woman, to say the least. I am a Kindle girly through and through. I still love sifting through a paperback. I love paperbacks to my core, but oh my god, I feel like there's some magic in a Kindle, and I feel like I can read literally 3 times as fast on a Kindle than I could in paperback. I don't know the science, but I definitely feel like it's true. The first book that I read of the year was Love Under Contract by Cassie Connor, and I gave this book 4 stars. I have my notes in my Notion app on my phone, and so I'm going to go through each one of these books. It's just really hard to remember all the nitty-gritty details of every book, and I write these notes right after I finish the book, so they're like the most fresh in my mind, and it gives you the best perspective on my thoughts on that book overall. So when it comes to Love Under Contract, I said super cute rom-com, actually made me giddy, like feet kicking type of giddy. I love the strangers to lovers aspect of it, and that the sexual tension started just 25 pages in. The fake dating added a great banter. It's the first time I've loved seeing the woman fall so fast in a book, which was really new for me. But I loved her journey from being a workaholic to understanding she can also have love and be loved in the process. And one of my favorite scenes of the entire book is the closet scene. So if you've read this book, you'll know what I'm talking about, but it was a very sneaky, spicy scene that happened in a closet during a dinner party. Moving on to my next book, it was A Court of Silver Flames, which you can see right here. This is an annual reread for me. I absolutely love this book. I'm a huge fan of it. 5 stars. I said this book always does the trick. This is my 4th reread, and it always gets me off my ass and gets me motivated to handle my shit. A total comfort book for me, and goddamn if I'm not a Cassian girly. Next, we're gonna get into the author that basically took up the most brain space of my head this month, and that's Tate James. This is the first time that I've ever read her before or any of her work. A girl in my book club in my neighborhood has been begging me to pick up her books and read them, and I just haven't. I have a big TBR, and so I was like, no, I just haven't got to the chance to do it yet. But I did this month, and once I dipped my toe into the Tate James water, I could not live without it. I started with the Madison Kate series. I read all 4 books in basically a week, you guys. I consider this entire series as like one big book. The thing with books that are this intoxicating and addicting when it comes to the writing, like you cannot put the book down, is that when there's multiple books like that, they kind of mesh together to one big ass movie in my head, or like one big book in my head, because I never stop reading. I literally jump from the page of the last book to the next page in the first book with no step in between, no any other books in between. I'm literally 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's how I was with this series this month. I absolutely loved it. 5-star series. I will say my favorite book out of the series, if I had to pick one, would have been the last one, which was Kate. It just brought everything beautifully together, but I did have some notes after these series, so I'm gonna run through those really quickly. Wow, hooked from 20 pages in. The mystery, the smut, the reverse harem, oh my fucking god. Read this in 24 hours and immediately went to the next in the series. That is what I'm talking about. That was my note after book 1. This series has me by a chokehold. I haven't done anything except for read it every chance I get. It has all been a whirlwind. I blew through this book so fast it combined with the others. Absolutely amazing. Holy shit, the smut scenes were delicious. The angst and sexual tension, the mystery. This may be a new fave series of mine. And the final comment for the final book, 5-star series. Although I would have preferred it to end slightly differently, it was still 5 stars for me. Next up, I read the book Praise by Sarah Kate. Absolutely love this book. Really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I said it's a super fun read. The ex-boyfriend was annoying as hell, and he was. But I feel like some authors write certain characters just to annoy the fuck out of the reader, because it brings like interesting aspects to the story. And so even though sometimes I feel like, oh my god, I hated this character, I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, okay, we were meant to hate that character. We were meant to not like that character. That means that the author wrote the shit out of that character because it worked. And her boyfriend in this book, oh my god, made me want to send an elbow to his face. I really enjoyed the kinky shit, taboo relationships, and story as a whole. I especially enjoyed it when the FMC came into her own confidence. This is an age gap, taboo relationship, sex club type of situation in this book. Praise kinks, that's why it's called Praise. Ex-boyfriend's dad type of situation, who's a multimillionaire who owns these sex clubs. It is a whirlwind of a book, so if you have not dabbled in dark romance, I definitely recommend it. Next up was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book, much more than I thought I initially was. I thought this was going to be a hyped up book that people just talked about on Book Talk or all over the internet, and then I read it and it was going to be kind of boring, but truly it was very, very interesting. My notes on this one says, very cute romance book. This book blended grief and love seamlessly while still keeping the magic alive. I did think it was beautiful. The main female character in this book ends up losing her aunt, who's she's extremely close to. Her aunt ends up gifting her this apartment, which is a magical apartment. It walks through different ways, especially in this main character, how she's dealing with grief and the loss of her aunt who she loves so dearly, and how she's gonna move on in the world without her. And here's the big kicker, for a book with no smut, okay, do you hear me? No smut. It definitely has cute parts that made me kick my feet, and I really enjoyed it. Now this next book, The Ritual by Chantel Tessier. Let's give a round of applause for this 5-star fucking masterpiece. This book is dark. This book is taboo. This book is fucking insanity, and I loved every single delicious page of it. Let's just see what my notes say about this one, because there was some crazy shit in this book. I went from saying, what the fuck is happening? Oh my god, I can't believe this is happening. Hell yeah, I'm so glad this is happening. So I said, dark romance. The beginning had me gasping, saying, what the fuck am I reading? But I kept going, and it started getting so good. If you're into crazy dark shit in the beginning, this will hook you from the first page. But it took me about 10 pages before I was hooked. Holy fucking smut. This is BDSM, dirty, dark, submissive and dominant, stalker, basically a mafia described as a lord. Dark college romance had me feeling all the emotions throughout the book. Perfection. Then we dive into Miss Tate James again, into the next 5-star series, which is the Hades series by Tate James. I love this series even more than the Madison Kate series, and I'm only 3 books in. I have 1 book left. I'm currently reading it. I'll probably finish it the first week of February, but this series is amazing. Hades is a badass bitch who runs all these gangs, who's the top fucking dog running in the entire town. She has a psychotic, fucking disgusting ex who does some really fucked up shit to her. But again, her writing is so intoxicating that the books all blend together like it's just one big ass movie. Like it's one big ass book, and you cannot tell. It literally leaves in a scene on one page and then it opens it up on the book on the very next scene. Like you do not miss any time. The first book that I read in the series, I said, this series just blurs together as I race through these books. I really enjoyed the new viewpoint of Shadow Grove and getting the information from the rest of this story. The character development is really good. I read this in 2 days. That's the first book in the Hades series. The Hades series follows the same town that the Madison Kate series does. It's just a different set of characters. And yes, both of these series from Tate James are reverse harems. The second book, I said I love to see the characters start to come together, and holy hell, the spice was giving. If only we all had a Lucas in our lives. Jesus Christ. Lucas was my favorite character, okay, of this entire book. He is a book boyfriend I would love to have in my life. I absolutely fell in love with him from the moment I saw him come onto the page, and the way that he grows throughout the series is phenomenal character development, and he's packing. Okay, the third book in the series was the last one that I just finished in this series, and you guys, it had me shook. Okay, it had me shook because I am in the throes of this book. I am in the throes with these characters, and I was totally lost within it. By this point, I'm missing sleep. By this point, I'm not acknowledging any of my adult responsibilities. I am like so hooked. This was the favorite book of the entire series for me so far. It was Club 22. This is my note after I finished it. This series has me terrified. I have fallen in love with these characters and their dynamic, and fuck yes to a strong ass bitch as the female main character. But this cliffhanger will be the death of me. What the fuck just happened? That is exactly what I'm talking about. The cliffhanger in Club 22 gutted me. I was so glad that all the books in this series are out, so I did not have to wait, and thank fuck I had access to it. It's all on Kindle Unlimited. Then the last book of the month was the one that I DNF'd, and this was The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. Let me tell you, this book just wasn't for me. This was the one book that I decided to read this month to learn. A new thing in the new year is that I'm gonna set my goals for my reading goals for a certain amount of books to read per month, but one of those books has to be to learn something, whether it's personal development, mental health, teaching me a skill, writing a book, whatever it may be. That is the focus, so I continue to learn and evolve as I grow. Unfortunately, that was the book that got DNF'd this month, because the entire premise of the book was to teach me how to get out of my comfort zone, how to work through not allowing my comfort zone to keep me from expanding and growing and going into these new areas. But about 7 chapters in, we had still only talked about hunting and hiking mountains. And I get that that was probably the author's way of getting out of his comfort zone to go do those things, but it was not coming around in a way that could correlate to how this was gonna teach me how to get out of mines. I decided there is too many amazing books out there to learn from and to read, and I didn't want to waste my time on something if it wasn't hitting where I needed it to hit, so I DNF'd it. Just wasn't for me. Now that we've done my January reading wrap up, let's go ahead and jump into my February TBR. Keep in mind, I'm a big mood reader, so I schedule these TBRs with the best intentions, but they almost always never pan out that way. But in my mind, today, this is what I'm planning on reading in February. I have 5 books in January that I want to read. 4 of them are for fun, and 1 of them is to learn. I have not read any books by any of these authors, so I'm so excited to dive in because there are some amazing names in here. First up, we have The Stopover from T.L. Swan. I've never read T.L. Swan before. I know, don't shoot me, but I'm going to a book conference later on this year, and she's gonna be there, and so I want to read through this Stopover series, which I heard is like one of her best series, before I go there so that I can get it signed by her. I heard that this is just a delicious, beautiful book, so I'm really excited to read this one. Up next, we have the Bonds That Tie series. I'm finally digging into this one by Jay Bree. I've heard amazing things about this series as well. I've heard it breaks some people's hearts. I've heard it has amazing smut in it, and I am just excited to dive in. I am going in to all of these books blind, which I love to do. I love to not know so much about a book that it kind of ruins the entire plot, like spoilers. I like to learn along the way, so I genuinely just like to go off of people saying, this book was amazing. I absolutely love this book, fell in love with this book, this series, author is amazing, and then it makes me want to read their stuff. But when they tell me every plot point, every twist, every fucking thing about it, I'm like, okay, well, I just read the book in a synopsis, so I don't need to do that. Up next, we have Ali Hazelwood, Hood, if I can talk today. Up next, we have Ali Hazelwood, Love Theoretically. I've heard a lot of people say that this is her best book out of what she's put out so far. I don't know, we'll find out. If you have a best book by her that isn't this one, let me know your thoughts down below. Then we have King of Wrath by Anna Huang. She's also going to be at the event that I'm going to be at later this year, so I wanted to start getting through this series in particular because I heard it's absolutely beautiful, stunning, amazing time. So I'm really excited to dive into this one. Finally, the book that I'm going to read to learn something this month is going to be Story Genius. I'm not saying I'm writing a book tomorrow, not saying I'm writing a book this year, but I would like to learn more about the ins and outs and craft of writing a novel. And so this is what I'm gonna teach myself this month. That is it for January's reading wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Comment down below your favorite part of this video. What's the #1 book you're gonna read in February? Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, besties.